Yeah, so nice to be here. This is actually my first meeting that I've ever been to. I've been a member for about 6 months now. Yeah, my name's Bill Elwell. I'm a history professor up at Monmouth University in Long Branch. And I live in Point Pleasant, so it wasn't that bad of a drive to get here this time. That was kind of nice. But yeah, so I'm a history professor. I actually teach like military history, but I do all research into Jersey Shore railroading and specifically how the railroading built the tourism industry up and down the shore. So I usually deliver this presentation to local historical societies from Sandy Hook to Cape May. So I like to tell people that this is not a train presentation. This is more of a presentation in how the railroads built tourism. So I added in a bit extra train content towards this. Yeah, so I added a little bit more into this, but enjoy. So anyway, I always start off with this postcard. Almost the entire presentation is made using my railroad paperwork and those of societies that I've spoken to. All of that is over there. If anybody wants to get up at any point, go look through. I've got about 5,000 timetables at this point, going back to the 1860s, almost all Jersey Shore related. But I start off with this postcard because to me, this is the most indicative display of Jersey Shore railroading that I can see, at least in a picture. This postcard's 1905, and it's specifically in Bayhead, over Twilight Lake. So the background of it right there is the Bayhead Loop of what was the New York and Long Branch and is now the North Jersey coastline. If anybody's familiar with the area, this is the parking lot for Muller's Bakery today, which is a fantastic crumb cake. But anyway, in the background, you've got the Beacon Hotel there. You're about 400 yards from the beach. You are on trestles that are 3 to 5 feet above the water. All the windows in the coaches are open, so you're smelling the salt air, but you're also getting clobbered by clinkers and ash. And it's kind of par for the course for it, but it's just such a great image of Jersey Shore railroading being that close. And this is the reason that you're taking the train. It's to get to the beach, to be this close to the ocean. And very few places have I seen postcards that come across this exact way. In giving this presentation to other societies, usually I have to spend like 15 minutes, even though it's not a railroad presentation per se. I have to spend like 15 minutes explaining to people how and when and why the different companies reached the Jersey Shore. So we're going to blow through that because I'm pretty sure everybody here at least has a pretty good understanding of the different companies and when and why. But this picture specifically is an inset from a 27 PRR system map. And on this map is the most amount of black ink that we see for railroad lines at the Jersey Shore. Everything, including the Tuckerton Railroad, is extant in this picture. But of the 120 miles of Jersey Shore coastline, only 8 miles are not directly accessible by rail to the Jersey Shore. And that specifically is this region right here, which was what is now Island Beach State Park. And the only reason that it is still this unspoiled, I mean, not unspoiled, you still have to drive, there's pavement there. But the only reason it's that unspoiled is because the railroad decided to turn north in Seaside Park instead of continue on south. So really, really tangible evidence of the railroad affecting the development of the Jersey Shore. The only one I color coded for different companies. I tried to consolidate and simplify for a whole bunch of them, but realistically, these are the different branches and the different railroads that made it to the Jersey Shore, with the most important being the first one, the Camden and Amboy. And without going into the details of its ascension to Jersey Shore folklore, the most important part of it is the monopoly clause that prevented other railroads being built to serve the New York to Philadelphia market, which it completely stopped competing railroad lines for about 20 years. The first one that even challenged it directly to the Jersey Shore region being the Raritan and Delaware Bay in 1854, a full almost 25 years after the Camden and Amboy was started. bought 1870 by Jay Gould, formed the New Jersey Southern Railroad. Dire financial straits 3 years later made him sell it almost 10 years later to the Central of New Jersey. Obviously became the Southern Division. The branch lines off the Southern Division. The only railroad that we have that's expressly not for shore traffic, or at least in terms of building, is the Freehold and Jamesburg Agricultural. And then we have the New York and Long Branch as one of the two greats when it comes to Jersey Shore railroading. And I always have to stop and pause because of it being so important with the only block of text that this presentation has on it. But for those less familiar with the New York and Long Branch, it was created as its own company and leased by the Central Railroad of New Jersey in 1870 with the express interest of going down the Monmouth and Ocean County shoreline and creating new resort towns along the coast. It's so threatening of a business proposition to the Pennsylvania that the Pennsylvania comes in and says, hold on a second, we're going to build our own parallel line about a mile inland from the Central Railroad of New Jersey's. They get very threatened by that, and they come to an ownership agreement of about 50% each. So this is one of the only railroads in the company that's jointly owned in this manner, and it is the only one that is expressly made to serve tourists. And that's the point of this entire thing is we're all familiar with how railroads make their money by carrying stuff, commodity, freight. And passenger service is usually a losing proposition for any sort of railroad, especially now with state-run commuter railroads. But the Jersey Shore is completely different, where the entire industry that's created in a state that realistically in the 1800s is mostly cottage industries and pig iron that's getting replaced by coal from steel from Pennsylvania pretty early on. But passenger service, tourism is the industry that's created. Carrying people becomes the money-making idea for the summers at the Jersey Shore. So this is an excerpt from Railroad Magazine in July of '52. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a railroaders magazine that was published from the 30s to the 70s. And it was like a really good history or current events article every issue, and then like 30 pages of lingerie ads, which is fantastic. But the July '52 issue is really timely because it's like the height and the fall of the New York and Long Branch and railroad tourism service at large. But it's quoted as saying the New York and Long Branch is in effect a highway department for the Central and Pennsylvania. It provides the track, crossing protection, stations and agents, dispatching, and some servicing and switching for the 44 passenger and 4 freight trains of the Central New Jersey, and for 39 passenger and 4 freight trains of the Pennsylvania, which move over its rails in whole or in part on a normal weekday in midsummer. And the proof's in the pudding there. The numbers are crazy. That's 83 passenger trains a day versus 8 freight trains. Mind you, dual operation, you've got Pennsy and CNJ trains that are running over, but that's a lot of service to reach all of these Monmouth and Ocean County locations. Anyway, I like to immediately follow that up with the Tuckerton Railroad, founded the exact same year, and I like to, excuse my French, but call it the bastard child of Jersey Shore railroading, where the only profitable year that it had in serving Tuckerton, which was supposed to be a big port, fell out of favor, then became like a region for gunners and hunting and that kind of tourism. The only profitable year it had was 1929, when it was carrying the construction equipment to build Route 9, which killed it. Philadelphia Long Branch, the Atlantic Division, later on. This is obviously the picture that I had in the postcard beforehand. They also had the Long Beach Island service briefly. And then we've got down here all the railroads that formed into PRSL in 1933. We're going to discuss this a little longer, so I'm not going to go into it, but you've got the Camden Atlantic, you've got the Philadelphia and Atlantic City, you've got West Jersey and Atlantic, West Jersey and Seashore later on, and all the other constituent companies that formed into it. What's unique about PRSL, as we all know, is that it's similar to the New York and Long Branch in that it became jointly owned, but that one was to force the closure of competition during the Great Depression. So again, it's 2 examples of major railroads cooperating with each other for the tourist dollar, whether decided or desired or not. So anyway, 1927, everything's on the map. And we can move forward with the rest of this, which is tourism in New Jersey, or specifically tourism before the Civil War. Who's doing it and why are they doing it and what did it look like? One of my favorite paintings out there, this is Francis Silva, who was big, like landscape artist from the era. This is 1870, and it is strolling along the bluffs at Long Branch, which is a really good interpretation of what it looked like. You've got people on the beach wearing entirely too many clothes. You've got the beach with entirely too few buildings on it. I like the easygoing, no building anyway. But you got some pavilions. Why are people going to the Jersey Shore? And I am very interactive, so feel free to call out at any point. I don't mind. Why are people coming to the Jersey Shore, and who's doing it? It does warm the waters, but nobody's going in the water in those clothes. So you're right, but exactly. And we're going to get into Pitney for a minute. But that's the people that are coming here, is it's medicinal. Specifically, salt air is helpful for the lung diseases that were common at the time, like diphtheria or cholera or anything like that. So people's doctors would actively prescribe extended trips to the salty sea air to clear out one's lungs. And at me, as living in Point Pleasant, I see it. The salt air is pretty nice for it. But anyway, those are the people that are going, but specifically the only people that could go are the ones that could afford to be away from work for 3 months, the ones that could afford the time off, and specifically the cost of doing it. The first person we have in recorded history that is actively talking about the health benefits in writing of the Jersey Shore is this guy, a Swedish Lutheran pastor from actually around here. His name is Reverend Carl Magnus Wrangel, who in the late 1680s, early 1690s took a trip out to the Great Egg Harbor area. And he's out there on the beach and he realizes this is really good for my lungs. This feels good. And he writes back to his congregation and says, if you guys are ever feeling kind of like run down or just want some cooler, cleaner air, this is where you should be going. And the problem is that when you're going there, there's nowhere to go. And the only places that you really can go are existing boarding houses and taverns that line the stagecoach routes on the major arteries, the major routes that go from the little villages up to the major cities. So you've got routes to Philadelphia, you've got routes to New York, but nothing is on the beach. And these places are usually, a base room with a bar downstairs and food that you can get, and the second floor often has rooms for rent, or it's just one big open room and you get to rent the bed. But these are places for people that are traveling on business to stop. If you're selling your farm goods in the city and you have like a 2-day stage or wagon trip to go, this is where you stop. These are not made for the tourist, the health guest. Now, this one is still standing if you've never been there. This is the Cedar Bridge Tavern in Manahawkin, which conveniently was also the site of the last land engagement of the American Revolution. So if you've never been out there, go there. It's also the oldest bar counter in the United States. So just cool to see. Anyway, one of the first purpose-built hotels is actually on Long Beach Island, and this is the Harvey House in Harvey Cedars. It's not there anymore. This is a picture of it in the 20s after it had been expanded. But first almost beachfront hotel, built 1840, had about 40 rooms in it too. So specifically for people to come and stay on the beach. And then these are pretty quickly eclipsed. But Harvey House and smaller hotels are pretty eclipsed pretty quickly by, this is Congress Hall, its second iteration in Cape May, where Cape May becomes the destination for people to come and stay by the beach for health reasons. I'm sorry, am I still blocking you? Okay. Anyway, the people that are going to Cape May are not Philadelphians, they're not West Jerseyans, they're not New Yorkers. Very specifically, Cape May's 1850s staycationers are wealthy Virginia plantation owners, specifically from the Tidewater area, that are sending their goods to Philadelphia to market on the existing steamship and sailing ship packet lines, that they can stop on the Jersey Cape while their employees go and sell their stuff at market in Philadelphia. Could take all summer, but they can stay on the Cape while all this is happening. So almost all of Cape May's guests for the first 15 major years are Southerners. This entire thing is killed off in 1861 with the beginning of the Civil War. And it's actually the Civil War that really inspires the railroad to come to Cape May in 1863 to get a new crop of people into Cape May now that they've lost their entire market. Bringing in Pitney now. Dr. Pitney is a nice doctor from around this area, and he does house calls all around the region, and he is really not making a lot of money doing this. But he also goes to Absecon Island on the coast, which is conveniently 2 miles away from the mainland through the marshes and the thoroughfare. And there's 7 houses and 1 bar on the entire island. He goes there maybe once every 3 months and does his house calls, and then he goes back, and he's not making any money from doing this. But he realizes while he's on the island that this is really clean out here. It's warmer in the winter, it's cooler in the summer, and for some reason there's no flies, which is a load of crap anyway, because there's a lot of mosquitoes in Atlantic City. But he realizes that this is a great place for people to come. And he's a doctor, he's prescribing this idea anyway. Why can't I make more money and create a health resort? The first purpose-built beachfront health resort in the United States, if not the world. So he gets together with a whole bunch of Pine Barrens industrialists and says, let's form a company, let's form a city. You guys, as the investors, will get the benefit of let's turn Atlantic City into a port where you can ship all of your finished iron goods or raw pig iron, and I'll just lay out the rest of the city and we'll make a health resort. Forming the Camden and Atlantic Railroad with subsidiary Camden and Atlantic Land Company. Now, there they are, Samuel Richards and Pitney, and on the board of directors list, but it works. And the railroad lays out the city, the land company lays out the city, but what's really important about the whole concept is the railroad owns everything. They own every ounce of the vacationer's vacation, whether that is the purchase of the fare to get there. They own the hotels, very specifically the most famous, the United States Hotel in Atlantic City, and really conveniently, let's build the track right up to the back door. We are bringing you there. They own the restaurants that are there. They own the souvenir shops. They own the real estate. They own the leasing offices. They own the entire city. Now, at this point, the city they own 2/3 of the island, and then what's now Margate and Ventnor and all that down there isn't really developed yet, but they own the island. Another view of the U.S. Hotel with, again, the railroad going right up to it. There's other examples in New Jersey history where the railroad companies or railroad influencers were owners of hotels at the Jersey Shore. Most famously is probably the Baldwin Hotel in Beach Haven, which was owned directly by the Baldwin family, and they built the first railroads on the island to serve the hotel. Another really great example is one that's pretty forgotten. This is Barnegat Park, which is now the Pinewald section of Toms River. And this one was formed in the 1870s, 1880s as a health retreat for Civil War and Indian War veteran officers with PTSD. A full community and hotels and everything that completely failed, but the railroad set it up. Beechwood, another example, there's a lot of these around. But it brings me to my favorite part of this presentation, and I'm kind of wondering how this is going to hit out here, but how many of you are familiar with either of these terms? Yes. These are both slang terms, okay? They're both slang terms for tourists, but the definitions, the use cases are very different. B.E.N.N.Y, I have acronymed, and B.E.N.N.Y is who we would refer to as tourists to the Jersey Shore, specifically from the New York and northern New Jersey areas. I have it acronymed Bayonne, Elizabeth, Newark, New York. There are other ideas, and these are words that we freely throw out at home during the summer when we're caught in traffic. But Bayonne, Elizabeth, Newark, New York. There are other ideas for where this term came from. One of them is the health benefits of coming to a Jersey Shore vacation. That one's a pretty decent one. These are terms that the meanings of them are argued about a lot. Another one is New York tourists coming and whipping out Benjamins on their vacations. Like, that was a good one, but the term is a lot older than people spending hundreds of dollars on a vacation. And then Shuby we'll talk about in a minute, but there's a colleague of mine at Monmouth that was recorded in the Asbury Park Press 10 years ago, which is kind of nuts. Where does the term Benny come from? And he was like, there was never a railroad that went between all of those places, so it can't be an acronym. And then I showed him this map, where all of these destinations were the feeder lines into the New York and Long Branch. So we would argue, especially when it comes to baggage tags and just how terms get stereotyped and like lumped in together, that Benny refers specifically to the New York tourists like that because of the railroad itself. Now, if we go back, there's Shuby here, which have anybody ever heard of Shuby before? Yes, the day trippers. Now, they're just to devil's advocate for a second, there is an idea that it's people that wear their socks and shoes on the beach and then therefore get made fun of. That was common back when this term was made, so I think that that's not it. But yes, it refers specifically to the day trippers to the Jersey Shore that would bring their lunches in shoe boxes. As a term in parlance now, it refers to Pennsylvania and West Jersey tourists that go to specifically the southern half of the Jersey Shore. So there's a lot of geography to these two terms, but we've got the term, we've got the shoe boxes. And the reason it comes into being is specifically because of Pitney and the Camden Atlantic and the operation that they had going on there, where, like I said before, the railroad owns every single ounce of the vacation. This is in the 1860s, early 1870s. They own the means of getting there and everything that you're doing there. They also want a specific class of people to come to Atlantic City, the wealthy people who are going to spend 3 months in the hotel, right? But this is the middle, if not the biggest period of the industrial revolution in the Northeast, where you now have a new class of people that didn't exist before. This being the middle class, the working class, the people that are working in the factories and now have a living or disposable wage that they can use to do other things. And while we're in the factories, while we're working 6 days a week, why not go to the Jersey Shore for a day, get out of the smog, get out of the work? Let's do the things that the older or the wealthier people do. They go to the Jersey Shore because they can get there in an hour and a half, they can spend the day at the beach and then be back for work on Monday. And in this, they pack their lunches in shoe boxes because they're not going to spend, they're on a disposable income or a limited income. They're not going to spend their money in places that they don't need to do. So this term comes about in the 1860s, and it's really derogatory at first, where we don't know if it was the railroad companies or if it was the local like restaurant owners that leaked this idea to the press that, oh, these disgusting shoobies aren't spending money here. But the railroads learned within about 2 years that these people are coming in droves. They are packing trains. We should probably like be happy with them because they're paying our bills. So really quickly, they realized that they can plug the profit drain with a brand new idea. We could support the shoobies. We could capitalize on the shoobies. Let's change how we operate and how we sell a ticket. They come up in this time with the excursion fare. Now, when you're buying a round ticket, obviously you're paying full price for it. And if I hop on, I don't know, in Point Pleasant and I buy a ticket to New York City, I can hop off in Long Branch if I want. Nobody's going to say boo. But the excursion fare has more rules to it. And the idea here is we'll sell this ticket to the excursionist and give it to them cheaper, usually 2/3 of the price, but we're going to limit their vacation and their terms in doing so. Just more examples. But anyway, the excursion fare has a reduced rate, like I said. It's continuous passage, and it has to be used between the two stations that are on the ticket. No getting off at some intermediate place because the ticket's no longer valid. But what's really, really important of this is the days that you use it, where the excursion fare is valid for a very specific term of days, whether it's a day, 2 days, 6 days, a week. It has to be used for the return on the, like 6 days from the stamp on the back when it's redeemed. So in doing so, the railroad companies have now created a duration of time for the vacation. They've created the modern 2-day vacation, the modern 1-day vacation, the modern week-long vacation, because they're forcing the excursionists to take this amount of time. They go crazy with all these different ideas, though. They're selling dollar excursions and selling out trains, chartering extra trains, having to make new ones through the timetables. They realize, too, that we can make more money from the excursionists. They open excursion houses in a lot of the different southern Jersey resorts. And an excursion house is a home for the excursionist with everything but overnight accommodation. This one is in Atlantic City, and the excursion houses have entertainment, they have changing facilities, they have bathing facilities, they have cafes. And what's convenient about them is in almost every example, the railroad comes right up to the side porch. They are bringing you, and they are continuing to get a little extra money out of it, catering to the excursionists. So here's Atlantic City. There's a couple different ones. This one's Sea Isle City, which is now conveniently the property Excursion Park. I love that, where they kept that at least. The boardwalk is an extension of the, as an invention, is an extension of the excursion house, where it was a West Jersey Railroad conductor, Alexander Boardman, that invented the boardwalk in order to keep sand from coming into the excursion house. It wasn't an idea until the West Jersey employee had something to do with it. And the term boardwalk has nothing to do with boards. It has to do with his last name. Excursion trains, excursion fares get like completely thrown into the development of the Jersey Shore too, where you start to have chartered trains and excursions for property speculation, where this one is for Holly Beach, part of Wildwood now, but it was a whole bunch of communities where land improvement associations would sell excursion tickets to for home buyers, and they would sell you the ticket, and then if you bought a lot, they would refund you your $1.50. Great. Excursion fairs go all over the country, specifically for the Jersey Shore. This is a 1916 brochure, a Pennsy brochure for Chicago, where of 36 pages, 40 of them have to do with Jersey Shore excursions. 30-day and summer excursion tickets. This one's an awesome trip that you could take. What is it, 16 days to go to all the major different Jersey Shore resorts for $12. Like, that one's pretty nice. Group fairs, where excursions could be for larger different groups, and they're cheaper fares, and they're trying to get as many people involved in them as they can. And then later on, and this is a big theme here, is when the railroads start losing money, they realize that sex sells in their advertising. So you can go to Atlantic City on air-conditioned P-70s and have a chance of seeing her in the beach. That one is 53, if I remember correctly. C&J tried it again in the 70s with the Mermaid service from the Raritan Valley to Bayhead, but it was a dismal failure because this is also bankruptcy time. New Jersey Transit, however, they don't want you to know that you can save money with them, so the excursion tickets are still there, but they're in the fine print. And this one's one of my favorites because they've changed it around where instead of saving money on the ticket, they still charge you the same price, but they give you a beach badge for free, which is a pretty decent deal. Badges are like 15 bucks now, so like that one works. Trolley lines also got into it. The shore fast line would do 75% just hop on, hop off excursions along the entire system. Then it changes a little bit because we've got to figure out other ways of getting people to board the train. So very early on, they do full-on chartered train system services. And this is at a time where, again, we've got the working class, and we can get entire groups of them. You can have companies charter entire trains to get to the Jersey Shore. This starts like 1870-ish, and it's a lot of central and eastern Pennsylvania companies that get involved, where they charter a train and they publish these timetable trade cards that are really Charles Dickensy. That are, I don't know why they chose to do it like this, but they did. Full-on trains, hundreds of people at once to the Jersey Shore. With this foundation, they realized we can do charters for a whole bunch of other different kinds of excursions. Religious groups are really popular with this, especially to Ocean Grove and Ocean City. You would get the service and the concert included in your fare for getting on the chartered train. Again, with the land deals, they would do entire trains to the communities that are trying to be built. Sea Isle was a really big one for that. That was Stone Harbor, same idea. And then from there, they realized that, okay, the Jersey Shore is a very seasonal economy. And we have to be able to use the equipment that we have invested so heavily in that is now sitting idle from October through about March, April. So in the teens, they get really involved with the town fathers, specifically of Atlantic City, but also Asbury Park, of how can we get people here year-round. So they start sponsoring different conventions throughout Atlantic City where you rent out the hotel, you rent out the train, everything's taken care of. This one I love. This one must have been a really exciting time for the Railway Accounting Officers Association. 1920 at the Hotel Traymore. Arguably a little different, the VFW of Wisconsin. I mean, these are just some examples. The American Gas Association. Asbury Park had their fair share too. The American Library Association hosted in Asbury Park every year for like 30 years in the early 20th century. And then the biggest thing, the biggest catch for excursions and charters is the Miss America pageant, which of the 9-member original board of directors for the Miss America pageant, 3 of the members were Pennsylvania Railroad executives. What's also interesting is they take it their own way too, where the Pennsy, Pullman Standard, all these other different companies had their big equipment shows in Atlantic City in the 20s and 30s. And for the price of your ticket, you as the general public could go around and see the latest equipment. Like some of the earliest GG1s were exhibited in Atlantic City before a public debut. So you'd go in, it's in Convention Hall, and you as the general public could go in. After World War II, now you've got people taking cars, and we'll get to that in a little bit, to go to the Jersey Shore. The last excursions are usually railfan groups like the Reading Rail Ramblers. Pretty much that's it for most of the time. But while you're on the trains, we got to figure out ways of making your experience better. So you start to get a lot of Pullman service pretty early on, and you do entire trips included with Pullman service like this. This is a special train in 1924, a ladies' shopping excursion to Asbury Park, completely Pullman. I did find record of this train. It was completely sold out. Blue Comet being the most famous of them. This is, I'm sure, its own presentation that could be had, but again, Pullman service at coach prices. It was extremely popular, and then 1929 comes around and the stock market crash. It fails. The Pennsy has their Nellie Bly service to compete. But great names get included for a lot of the different Jersey Shore service. This is a booklet from 1923, so immediately after King Tut is discovered in Egypt. So let's name some of our sunny Jersey Shore service the Egyptian god of the sun, Ra. Great idea. Excerpt, though, or a bulleted list from a PRSL 1941 timetable, and usually only the main trains get named at any sort of railroad company. Usually it's just numbered. At the Jersey Shore, though, almost every single passenger train is named, and you get great names like the Atlantic City Angler, Boardwalk Flyer, the Jolly Tar, the Shore Queen, the Fisherman Special. Almost done with the presentation here, but you got to house the people when you get them here. And the scenes are pretty similar and also pretty different than today, but infrastructure and equipment mirrors the attention that the railroads were giving to the Jersey Shore tourist. This is a 1911 postcard for Asbury Park. 10 years ago, if you were standing right there, you might have gotten shot. But not in 1911, where there's about 10,000 people in the square. To do this, and Asbury Park is a really great example of the attention that the railroads give in terms of infrastructure. This is the first station. It was built in 1872 and was torn down about 1922. Duly served Asbury Park and Ocean Grove right next to each other. But as a Methodist resort town, trains were not allowed to stop there on Sundays. To skirt this, the Pennsylvania built about 3/4 of a mile north, the North Asbury Park station, and a full 1/4 of a mile beyond that is the Interlaken station. So you've got all these stations that are serving Asbury Park this close to each other, just to get around some different blue laws and to bring more people to the town. By 1922, they have to rebuild. So this is the station that comes up next. And if you're a Lionel guy, this is the suburban station pattern. But what's incredible about this is there's so many resorts, so many stations need to be built. And in the 12 miles between Avon by the Sea and Little Silver, so all Monmouth County, there are 13 stations. And all of them get stopped at, and the coastline still goes slower than they did then. So I don't know, but a lot of different places that people need to be. South Jersey's a little different, where you've got multiple railroads competing for the same area. So you've got lots of stations in different communities, and they're competing with each other to show you how close that we can get. This is really convenient. This is a Pennsy and Reading. They're two timetables from the same day, June 27th, 1909. And on the back of them, they're arguing where the better service to Atlantic City is coming, the left being Pennsy and the right being Reading, where the Pensy's basically saying, hey, we can get you closer to the beach with our connecting Atlantic City, well, it wasn't Atlantic City and Shore yet, but our Camden and Atlantic, trolley service. And then Reading says, we can get you closer to the interior where the shopping is and everything along those lines. Similar all over South Jersey, though, where they have stations that are competing, whether it's West Jersey and Seashore or whether it's Atlantic City Railroad, where they're within a couple hundred feet of each other. Again, Sanborn maps, but this is Stone Harbor. You got the West Jersey stuff over here, and then Atlantic City Railroad was up top. It's less than a 1/4 mile from each other. Sea Isle City here, where you've got West Jersey right here and Atlantic City Railroad right there. There's really no difference, and it's really just which route do you want to take to get there. But what's really interesting about the Jersey Shore railroads is that it was so important to get people there that they're trying out new stuff and using the best of equipment possible. After World War II, it gets the worst of the equipment. So there's track pans that some of the first track pans in Pennsylvania history are installed in Long Branch and along the New York and Long Branch. Union Switch and Signal does some of their first automated block signaling along the New York and Long Branch. You've got electrification really early on the West Jersey and Atlantic that is reported as far away as civil engineering gazettes in England, which is why I had to pick this one up. Like, they were really proud of that. You've got they're assigning some of the newest passenger cars to Jersey Shore service and bragging about the safety and speed of them. So Jersey Central here is talking about their solid vestibuled steel cars pretty early on. This is 1919. Pennsy assigns really early on their P-54s to replace the wooden cars that had been in service beforehand. And then later on with P-70s being the main thing around here. Fastest steam locomotives in service at the time get the Jersey Shore treatment. So, I mean, everybody's familiar with 1223 over in Strasburg now, but this was a Jersey Shore queen for a long time on the Tuckerton when it was leased by them. The Reading does things a little differently, where I think it was the G2 Pacifics were class nicknamed the Boardwalk Flyer for how fast they're getting trains to Atlantic City. And this is a really cool, this one's a reproduction, but it's a really cool booklet that they published pretty early on. K4s are the queens of the New York and Long Branch and the Pennsylvania Reading Seashore lines for a long time. And again, all these things are shown off at the Atlantic City conventions that, you know, this is the stuff that's getting you here, and we're going to make sure that you get the best to get to the Jersey Shore. Just another inclusion. Pullman Standard debuted the PS1 boxcar at Atlantic City, which is pretty cool. Almost done here, but the railroads realized that we also have to inform people of what you're going to do at the Jersey Shore. And depending on the railroad, they do it differently, where the Pennsy was such a massive ridership that they could tap through the entire system. They all publish guidebooks to give information about destinations and routes, but the Pennsy does it in a very emotional way to convince people to come. And the C&J and the Reading do it differently, where they're so much smaller, they're going to give all of the information possible to convince the reader to come to the Jersey Shore. First are system-wide for Pennsy, where they give a little blurb about some of the more principal towns, but also have excursion routes and fares published for each one of these destinations. But again, it's for the entire system. Very quickly, they realized that we have to do, for some of the bigger things, individual guidebooks that kind of talk about what's important at this place. But the Jersey Shore changes every single year with new hotels built, new restaurants, and where they would publish different guidebooks every 5-10 years for anywhere else in the system, the Jersey Shore starts by the 1890s getting a new guidebook every single year. And they hire the best artists and use like really emotional language inside. This one's a great one, 1922, with a brand new Aeromarine flying boat from Keansburg right on the front. But these guidebooks really depict what you can see at the Jersey Shore. You've got large boardwalks, you've got restaurants and promenades, you've got the greatest feats of technology right at your doorstep. This one's another one where, you know, it's a family vacation, but again, you're going to see a nice looking woman in a swimsuit at the beach. This is probably one of the better ones, or not one of the better ones, but one of the more symbolic ones, 1928. At the Jersey Shore, you've got all these recreational activities like horseback riding, and you can get married under a trellis, and there's a sailboat and golf and croquet and the beach. But what's in the background? The city. No, you have all of this available to you at the Jersey Shore, and you are this close because of the railroad. And in this, it's inviting. I mean, she's literally waving to you, but it's let's get here because all of this is here for you. But the Depression comes around, and now sex sells again. So, you know, there's no more really expensive artists that's going on this, and, you know, bathing suits. Conversely, World War II hits, and now instead of beckoning you to come to the Jersey Shore, the Pennsy comes and says, do not come. We don't have the equipment. All the equipment is reserved for the Camp Boardwalk trains or for the Fort Hancock or NAS Wildwood trains. You have to stay away. We're sorry if you can't make your train. Don't come to the Jersey Shore. We will serve you better when the war is over. People that still wanted to vacation realized, okay, we can't take the train to get there. We might as well take the bus or drive. And it's purely because the railroads were doing their part in the war effort. After World War II, the brochures changed completely, where they're just little dashboard pamphlets that have maybe a page in them instead of 50 or 100 pages. And after like 1958, there's no more guidebooks for the Jersey Shore. Conversely, all of this emotion that the Pennsy poured into them, the C&J does things exactly different, where they want to give you all the information possible to make your decision. Whereas there were no hotel information or restaurants in there. Gustav Kobe was a New York Tribune illustrator and columnist in the 1880s, and he gets hired by the C&J to write a guidebook for the Jersey Shore, do the research. So 1889, he comes out with this book, and it is so in-depth. It has every single town in the Jersey Shore and the Pine Barrens, their hotels, whether the hotel is on the European or American plan, how many tennis balls that the tennis court has in it, what the tides are for the next 6 months. It's an absolute Bible for Jersey Shore history. And the C&J loves it. They end up doing this almost like every 2 years going forward throughout the rest of, until the 19-teens. They broaden it to the entire system, but they're always really, really in-depth. Even when it gets to the 20s and they have to make them a little smaller, they still offer more information than their Pennsy counterparts. The Reading does it a little differently, where their guidebooks are always like for one town. It's all the information they can give for the one town instead of compiled together. Atlantic City and Shore does their own guidebooks too, where they give all the information for like public buildings that you might need on your vacation, phone numbers, addresses. You can pick it up at any of the trolley stops. Western roads do a lot of information for vacations too, come the 50s when long distance trains are really pushed. So the Union Pacific now is doing your Jersey Shore vacation if you're coming from, I don't know, Omaha or something. But timetable, and this is pretty much the last part of this presentation, our timetables are where the railroad can get the most information to you, because everybody needs a timetable. This is how you figure out when your trains are, and it's captive advertising for the railroads themselves. So let's print as much of Jersey Shore content as we possibly can, whether it's in a system timetable or a local timetable. Of the Pennsy system timetables from 1900 to World War II, almost every single issue has a centerfold, full page or half page Jersey Shore advertisement. And very few other destinations are included in those. And this one was made into a poster somewhat recently, but the centerfolds are fantastic. And it's always a woman in a swimsuit or a boardwalk scene. Reading, their system timetables are, they are system timetables, but the blue, my guess, has to do with the Jersey Shore coloring. But their system timetables also get a nice centerfold spread for Atlantic City or the Jersey Shore. Local timetables are the cool ones, though, because these are meant to be thrown out. They're meant to be picked up at your local station and probably discarded pretty quick. But the attention that the local timetables receive is so much greater than local timetables, either within the systems or of other railroads. Camden Atlantic gets full color lithographs with all the things that you can do at the Jersey Shore. Here's the New Jersey Southern in, I think, 1879. So first issue, basically, both sides of the Monmouth, the Sandy Hook Peninsula, you're surrounded by water. Early lithographs for Pennsylvania to Long Branch with shore scenes. New York and Long Branch, I mean, that must have been the most expensive lithographer in Monmouth County. That was really good. I love this one, though. That's the Avon by the Sea Boardwalk, 1894, but the font looks like something out of an 80s horror movie. Like, I don't know who did that, but okay. Down here or Atlantic City, you either get photographs or really expensive artwork. That is Applegate Pier, brand new, season of 1893. Or you get a lot of nautical imagery like the trident, the net, the belts. Sidebar, though, is the importance that the railroads originally had in publishing timetables as a public service in newspapers, which they did in every issue, just for people to know. But 1906 comes around, and the Pennsy says, we're going to pull all newspaper printing budget for the Jersey Shore local papers. And in the Asbury Park Press, there's a columnist that basically says, this is a ridiculous idea. Why would you do this? This should be published like by law. It's that important to the public. And I always pause for people to like, why would they do this? Why would they cut the budget? The reason being that instead of saving money, they wanted to reallocate their money and pour more money into their local timetables for the Jersey Shore. So now you get full color printing, you get maps, they hire cartographers for it right on the back of them. 5 years later, so that was 1906, 1909. Then you get photographs printed on the cover, and I'm sure many of you have seen these before. But what's crazy is these timetables would get a new picture for every issue of the timetable. So if you have a second edition or a third edition for a correction in the timetable, they'd send the photographer out to go handle this and take a new picture. The one on the left is a 17th edition. So they sent a photographer out 17 different times and paid for it. And that's how much that they really cared about depicting the Jersey Shore. You got the steamboat service always advertised with really important graphics. The Reading, they put the route of the boardwalk flyer, capitalizing on how fast their Atlantic City Railroad trains are. PRSL always saying their excursions to the shore and having a boardwalk scene. Tuckerton, though, like I said earlier, the bastard child, these are printed in some guy's basement in Barnegat. So, okay. Blue Comet advertising for all the 20s and 30s Southern Division stuff. World War II happens again, though, and like I said before, Pennsy is not concerned with tourist service anymore. They are system-wide, putting their two soldiers and a sailor on the cover, and later on advertising war bonds. There's no more special attention for the Jersey Shore because they can't muster it. Without this special attention, without those extra cars, without that extra service, people find different ways to get to the Jersey Shore, and that is bus or car. After World War II, you just don't get the attention for Jersey Shore service anymore. Every once in a while, you might get a local timetable that has a paid-for advertisement for a local industry. So you got the Steel Pier, you got Frolinger, Saltwater Taffy, but there's not even close to the same information or attention that's given. The last time there's even a single Jersey Shore advertisement on any timetable, Pennsy local, is this New York to Richmond, Virginia timetable that is begging you, don't drive. Take the train to Atlantic City. This was 1959, last one. PRSL, though, is different. Its main reason for being is carrying people to the Jersey Shore, so I'm sure everybody's seen these issues before. It's the rotating list of what you see there at the boardwalk during the different seasons. The middle one's frigid. Like, that would actively deter me from taking the train to Atlantic City. Freezing kite flying on the boardwalk, no thanks. Amtrak, 89, they did one issue of a system timetable advertising the casino service, but they never really bring it back. Absolute last part of this presentation is how did it change? And what did the railroads do to actively change the demographic of the Jersey Shore? And they realized that, year-round we could try and make passenger service by encouraging people to commute, to live at the Jersey Shore and commute to wherever their cities are. Commuter fares work the same way as an excursion fare. You buy a book of 30, 60 round trips, whatever it might be. You punch them. And it was inspired by the excursion fare early on. It was really tried in North Jersey and around the Cherry Hill area earlier and brought to the Jersey Shore around the 19-teens. I love this one, though. Who is commuting from Tuckerton to Whiting's? But somebody did it because they printed it. But what's key at all of these, especially before World War II, but also up to the end and immediately after World War II, is they're not viewing the Jersey Shore as commuter, the New York or the Philadelphia metropolitan areas. They're viewing these areas as the seashore resorts. It's a place to go that this is now an ancillary service that completely changes during the 1950s. The 30s, they start to see the writing on the wall, and in the New York area papers, the passenger superintendents of the Pennsy publish as a tiny little stub article that our timetables are going to start reflecting the needs of the commuter in addition to those of the tourist or anything along those lines. We'll start publishing more pertinent information. Advertising changes in them too. This is a June 41 issue from PRSL, where in the margins they say there is a new life in New Jersey. Work in the city, sleep at the shore. You can start to see that even though this is a tourist timetable, the winds are shifting, and we're going to start attending to these people. The real attention comes when Transportation Displays Incorporated enters the scene in the 30s. And if you're not familiar with this company, they were a publishing company, an advertising company, and they offered the different commuter railroads. They would print the timetables for free. In exchange, they would get to sell the advertising space. And they would really only allow advertising that had to do with commuter-oriented things, so mostly in the New York area, but they would offer things that the commuter would be interested in, stuff for his wife, activities to do in Manhattan, things that you might need at home, like car service or local fuel oil dealers or something. This one, side note, is very important to me because this was the exact issue that my grandfather took to when he was doing a fact-finding mission to move the family from Irvington to Point Pleasant, and those are his notes in there, but those were the trains that he could make to Manhattan. But important on this is it's all local businesses that the commuter would want. Tally's Dodge just closed like 10 or 15 years ago. Seacoast Oil is still around. But also great things that you could do in Manhattan while you're there working or after you get out of work. This is the opening year for both Hello Dolly and Mame on Broadway. So really good little bit of history there too. Meanwhile, the railroads still published their own timetables, but they're plain now. They don't have the budget for printing. They don't have the budget for advertising. So you just get the Railroad Herald on it. I mean, in the Pennsy had a little bit extra, so they would put something like a hotel on the front in Manhattan, or here in 65, you get the World's Fair. The local roads, though, I mean, it's a service, and it reflects in the timetables. It reflects in the publishing. There's no attention to the tourist anymore. There's no attention for anything other than let's give the commuter exactly what they need. Same for PRSL, where you are reminded of, oh, we only have the RDCs now. NJT is changing this a little bit. It's not an advertising, but they're at least bringing back nautical imagery as part of their recognition for what each line is. The symbol for the North Jersey coast is the sailboat. The symbol for the Atlantic City line is the Absecon Lighthouse. So we get it, but it's still not the same thing as the nautical interpretation of the previous timetables. Equipment and stations have gone the same way, where stations used to be opulent, but now we've got, I mean, Asbury Station is a monstrosity. If you want an entertaining trip, drive to Asbury Park and look at how disgusting the station is. It's worth it. The equipment was the same way, where earlier, 20 years, 30 years prior, the turn of the century even, the equipment that the railroads assigned to Jersey Shore runs were the best that they had, the fastest equipment, the safest equipment. But after World War II, they don't care anymore. They're sending things to live out their last days in a place, in an area where they don't even want to be running this passenger service anymore anyway. Almost most famously are the Pennsy passenger sharks, which broke down all the time on the New York and Long Branch. Then there E8s that were almost dead at this point too, which a couple survive. I mean, one still survives at URHS if I remember correctly, but secondhand passenger cars. I mean, I love the Jersey Builder, which are all long distance coaches that were bought from the Great Northern, Northern Pacific, all the Western roads that didn't even have enough doors for commuters to get inside of them. And then the RDCs down in the PRSL territory, which is a great idea, especially for the finger distribution of the different barrier islands. Why send a train that needs to break apart when you can send a single self-propelled unit? But some of the last PRSL RDC days had maybe 3 passengers on it. attempt to bring passenger service back. The most famous was the MOM project in 2000, 2002, 2005, that zone, which was a really great idea to restore service to the Freehold and Jamesburg, the Southern, to get to Toms River, but it was killed in Trenton and by local interests. Chesapeake and Delaware has just bought this area, and so we have freight service that's really picking up again. If anybody was following like Rails of South Jersey, the Navy just got 4 really cool boxcars yesterday to the Naval Weapons Station Earl. It's all over social media now. We got celebrities of those boxcars. Cape May Seashore Line's doing their own great things down here. I mean, we're hoping, I guess, that there could be some more freight customers. You got SMS. We've got a lot of great companies, but there's still no passenger service that's restoring the Jersey Shore's original means for being. So again, that is the entire presentation. I'm excited to see where we go going forward, and thank you all for having me.